Okay, welcome everybody to the 3ds Max 101 class, beginning Max. This is the third class, and today we're going to be looking at some of the most basic modeling tools. And I don't want you to be confused that basic doesn't necessarily mean unimportant. Let me move this off screen here for a second and put that down. So I'm going to do this in a very, try to do it in a concise way, and then we'll go into tools in more depth. There's two main things that I'm going to show you today, broad topics. And one is making 3D out of 2D. And the second is something we call box modeling or polygon modeling. And while they seem simple, they're actually huge topics. So the first one to get out of the way is 2D out of 3D. And to do that, I'm going to activate the front viewport. I may not have mentioned it, but any viewport can be activated with a right click. You can also, if you want to click on the label of the viewport, you can activate it by doing that as well. I'm going to maximize that window. And then I'm going to go to the Create panel. And in the Create panel, that's the first icon on the left. In the second row, I'm going to choose Shapes. And under Shapes, there's a drop-down with splines, NURBS, curves, and extended splines. I'm going to choose splines. So Max is, this part of Max is probably some of the oldest code in the software, and this has not changed forever. So I'm going to demonstrate some very simple but techniques that are important to you. It's amazing how much you actually use the following technique to create 3D objects. So the first thing to do is to talk about drawing lines. And we choose the object type line. And then down here in the rollout, the creation method rollout, there's an initial type and there's a drag type. Now, I've been using this on and off, so I'm not exactly sure what the defaults are these days. But if the default is set to corner for the initial type and drag for the initial type, then you'll see the following kind of behavior. To draw a line, I click, I move my mouse, and I click. And as I move my mouse and click, vertices are set down like that. When I right click, that ends the shape. If I have the drag type set to corner, click, move the mouse, click. If I press and drag, nothing happens differently. And also the backspace key will remove the vertices while you are drawing. If the drag type is set to smooth, then initial type is set to corner. I click, and now if I press and hold down the mouse button, you'll see that now, rather than getting a discontinuous sharp corner, I get a Bezier curve through the vertice. Release the mouse, press and drag again, press and drag again, and you can see that now by using the smooth, I get that kind of an effect. If I change this to Bezier, then I have a very different effect. The more I drag, the more exaggerated the curve becomes. And you'll find that this is interesting and fairly uncontrollable. I'm going to delete that curve and also delete this curve. Oops, hit the wrong button. Delete, oops, sorry. Right click, choose select, click on that and delete. I'm going to go back to drawing lines again to do one more thing, which is that, and I'll change these back to corner, which is that I'm going to draw another shape like this. Only this time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create what is called a closed shape. To close a shape, when you get to the end, you move the mouse over the initial vertex, click, and you get a dialog box that says close spline, and say yes. There are two kinds of shapes in Max, a closed shape and an open shape. Closed shapes can also be, I'm going to make one here, self-intersecting. Max doesn't like shapes like this. Max likes shapes like this. When you're making 3D, think about what you're doing. If you pretend you're using power tools or something, you're going to hurt yourself, and then you will be maybe have a little more sense of caution as you work. This kind of shape, if I extrude it, is going to give me problems. This kind of shape is going to give me a very nice 3D. Let's go ahead for a second and come over. I will go back to multiple viewports and come back in here. Let's move over here, zoom back. Let me zoom back in this one. So if I've created simple lines like this, then adding a modifier to this is one of the basic ways that we create 3D. We add an extrude modifier, and now if I extrude it, you can see, let's change the color of this so it's a little more obvious. And put it in 3D, I mean in the perspective viewport, you can see here that we have created a 3D shape there. I can take that modifier and I can drag it onto this other shape. And now you can see that this has created a shape that's 2D. Another shape that's 3D. But this shape, which came from a closed curve, has a volume. It has an inside and outside. This one, let's get rid of the grid. G on the keyboard removes the grid. And let me move this shape down for a second so it's a little more obvious. You move it over here for a second. And I'll isolate this for a second and roll around it. And this appears to be pretty much a shape that there's not a real problem with, but that's actually not really true. What am I talking about? Well, let's go ahead and render this for a second. I'll click on the rendering dialog. And for some reason, I'm getting a lag here. So I will come over to rendering. Let's go to the environment panel for a second. And I'm going to change the color of the environment to something that isn't black. There we go. Say OK. Say OK. And I'm going to render. And I can render using, let's actually go to the render setup and see which renderer we have selected. I'm using the default scanline renderer. That's not the default in Max anymore, but it's still going to work for us. So you'll notice that I've rendered this, and now you can see that when you actually render this, there's a big problem. Now, if I turn around and look at this from the bottom side and then proceed to render it again, now you can see that this side is rendering, this side is not. So in Max, the viewport does this little trick to display the faces whose face normals are facing away from you, which I believe someone thought was useful and helpful, but it's not helpful when you then get a nasty surprise when you render and discover that those face normals are not pointing toward you. Be aware that that is the current behavior of the viewport. You can change that by turning off something called backface cull or turning on backface cull, whichever it is. And I'm not going to play with that right now. If I take that extrude and I apply it to the self-intersecting shape, it does have the same behavior as the open shape. If you want to avoid problems, try to make shapes that are nicely closed. That's the simple fact of the matter. Now, one of the great things about Max, let me get rid of this shape and concentrate on this one for a second, is this special behavior that is available in the modifier stack. So if I make a shape like this, and I come down here to the line, I'm not seeing the extrude because I'm down in the modifier stack. I can then go to the vertex level. I can select a particular vertex, right-click on it, and I can change its type of vertice so that the type of vertex that it is, it could be smooth. I could change one here. It could be Bezier, and the Bezier vertex has handles. Let's make this one Bezier. So the nice behavior that Max has is that it has a little icon here that says show end result. And if I have show end result turned on, okay, what have I done wrong here? We'll come back, there it is. All right, so show end result being on, now I can see as I select a vertex, and I'll make it a Bezier. And now I can see the end result of the extrude, even though I'm down in the stack. Maybe I'll select all those vertices, right-click, and make them smooth, like that. That is a common way to draw in Max, is to lay down points and then go back and then change the tangency, change the vertex type to be something that you want to adjust. Now, one behavior that has driven me crazy over the years, and it took me a while to figure out why it was doing it, I'm going to demonstrate the right way to do this. Let's go into the front viewport for a second, and I'm going to turn on realistic and hit G on the keyboard to get rid of the grid, and I'm going to zoom in here. So if I select a vertex and I right click and I make it Bezier, then you see these handles here. What is not obvious is that in order to move those handles, you first need to select the gizmo, the transform gizmo. If I select the Y only handle, and then I go and I choose the handle here, I can't move it. It has to be moved in Y. If I choose X here, now I go to move the handle will only move in X. So in order to get a free movement of those handles, I need to select the plane, which allows me then to move the handles as a plane as well. I hope that's useful to you. And because I think it took me a couple of releases to figure out that that's what was going on. Now, the other thing that's really kind of neat is that if you hold down the, let's see, which key is it going to be? If I hold down the Alt key, no, Shift key. The Shift key allows you to change one handle independent from the other handle, like that. If you right click, you can choose reset tangents if you've messed them up. What else is available here on right click? This is pretty much it. The other things that are available are not on this menu, but down here, there's the ability to copy and paste those tangents, and I'll have to find them. There it is, tangent copy, and then I could choose I haven't done tangent copy for a while, but that's one of those tools that's hiding in there. So there are many tools in here, but I want to try to cover the basics, things that will be useful to you as you work. So if I want to draw something complex, my tendency is to draw, let's suppose I'm going to draw a candlestick. I will start here, and let's draw, click, 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 a shape like that. I then go to vertex mode, and then let's isolate that again, Alt Q, and then I will use my individual vertices. If I use smooth, I just get the same tangency that comes in and goes out. If I choose Bezier, I have handles to play with to make the adjustment that I want, like that. Okay. While we're in here on the example of a candlestick, this is a kind of a good example for a couple of reasons. One is that what you just saw is that one of the simplest things that you do to make 3D is to add an extrude modifier. The other kind of modifier that you use is a lathe modifier. So here I'll go to the, this is very important. If I'm down here and I choose some vertices, and then I go to add a modifier, that modifier will only apply to that selection set. So before I add a modifier, I go up here where this turns gray, and it shows that I'm at the object level, not at the sub-object level. Yellow means sub-object, gray means object level. Now at the object level, I can then add a modifier, a lathe modifier. I hit L on the keyboard. This gives me a lathe modifier. And now I can see the axis of the modifier. I can decide if I want it to be a minimum, center, maximum, and the minimum is close. And then if I want, I could select the axis center and shift it out a little bit to get this object like that. If I then go back down here again and turn on see end result, then I can work at this level again without and be able to see what the end result is going to be. I'm going to turn that off for a minute here. Actually, let me turn it back on and show you that if we look at this candlestick right now, we see that because I had made an open shape, that I have kind of a problem in the up here. I have that very fine edge. And so what I want to do is come back down. Let's turn this off for a second. And instead, I would want this to be a shape that is a closed shape. Now there's a neat trick which I can use to make a closed shape, and that is to use to go down to the spline level and to use a tool called outline. I'll click on outline and I will drag out a little bit like that. And now I've made an outline. I'll turn it off. I'll turn on show end result. And now if I come up and see, you can see now that we have a nice three-dimensional object with volume. Now it has a hole that goes all the way through it. Why is there a hole that goes all the way through it? Because I haven't done this in a precise manner. And I probably want to go back to my front viewport or left viewport. I'm not sure which I did this in front. Okay, like that. And let's hit G on the keyboard and move this over. And we'll discover that one of the issues, one of the reasons there's a hole in it, oops. Let me go back down here. One of the reasons that there's a hole in this is because I'm actually going to turn off the modifier for a moment, turn off end result, and zoom in, is that I didn't pay attention to snapping this. So what I need to do now would be to take those vertices and shift them over like this. Now let's see what happens if I set them to be 0. Oops. Let's see, I want to move, and then I want to, I guess I have to do these one at a time here, and we'll make this 0 in X, take that one, make this 0 in X, and now this one also is 0 in X. And now if we turn on the lathe modifier and show end result, oh, turn it on, thank you. And now let's get out of isolation mode for a minute. There we are. And now you can see that that hole has disappeared. Now, if there is a very slight hole in the bottom, we can add another modifier, C on the keyboard, a cap holes modifier. Now, I don't know if you can see that. Let's zoom in up close, hide the cap holes, turn off the cap holes modifier. There's a tiny, tiny hole right where my cursor is moving there. And then if I add the cap holes modifier, it disappears completely. Okay. Let's recap what have we just talked about. We've shown 2 ways to make a 3D model out of 2D using a lathe and using extrude. Okay, some more basics in using 2D shapes. I think what I can do is hit reset here for a second, say yes. It's not that often that you simply draw a shape and then you're done. Oftentimes you want to combine shapes that are primitive shapes. So let's demonstrate how you might do that. I'm going to start with a rectangle like that. I'll make a circle that intersects the rectangle. Let's see, what else might I want to make? I'm just improvising here. I'll go ahead and also make a, let's just make another circle over here like that. And then let's see what happens when we play with this. And whenever I say see what happens when we play with that, that should make me think better hold, just in case something unusual happens that you don't expect to happen. So the first thing is that what we'll do is we'll do a 2D Boolean operation, and that'll be one way that we can combine these 3 shapes together. Now, these primitive shapes can be combined by taking one of the shapes, the circle, for instance, and I'm going to select it, and then I'm going to add an Edit Spline modifier. Edit Spline modifier, that makes this an editable spline shape. It allows me to go to the vertex. I'll select a particular vertex. I can fiddle with it. Let's see, what did I teach? Now I can do that. So there's an unusual kind of a shape that I've just created there. Take that one, move this one down here a little bit, play with it as I like. Now this is set to Bezier, so it should let me move these handles, but then who knows? Who knows why Max does some things that it does. In any case, we'll use that funny shape. So now I'll go back up to the object level, and then I can choose attach. I'll choose this object and this object. Now those 3 objects are intersecting attached shapes, and that allows me to then go to the spline level, and I'll choose the first one here, and I'll say, okay, I would like to make a Boolean, a union between this and the second one. Boolean, there. Now I have a shape that is, let's move this down so it's a little more obvious. Those 2 shapes have now become combined. If I want to do a subtraction, I'll choose subtraction, and that will cut. And that circle is now cut out of the rectangle. So this is a really useful tool for you to control what you want to do. More simple features that are found in this ability here, I'm going to choose a segment. I'll get rid of that segment. Frequently, you will want to take vertices and combine them together so that they are two vertices become one vertex. So in order to do that, I will go to the vertex level and we do something called weld. I'll select that vertex. I'll turn snap on. I'll right click and make sure that vertex snap is set. And now I'll drag that down and it snaps into place right there. Now, let's zoom in so we can see that. Now, if I drag around that, somewhere in here, it's going to show me right here, two vertices selected. See where my mouse is moving right here? Two vertices are selected. So now I will go and I will choose weld. And when I choose weld, now if I select it, now it says spline 1, vertex 1 selected. There were two vertices there. Now there's one vertex. Now, there's a number of ways that you can weld vertices together. Let's turn snap off for a second. If I grab those two vertices, a common technique, if I click weld, nothing happens because there's a weld threshold here. Now, of course, I haven't been paying attention to what the size is, so I'm going to set this to 100 or 1000 and click weld, and now everything within 1000 units of those two is welded together, like that. So that's a way to have vertices that are, how to make a shape that will then extrude nicely. Okay. What else in terms of, let's go back to edit spline mode. There's one other nice trick which is hiding in here, which is that if I create an object, and sometimes I can get this to work and sometimes it doesn't seem to work for me. So I made just an n-gon like that. If I turn off start new shape, and then I proceed to make some shapes. So let's see, I'll make this shape and I'll make this one and I'll make this one and this one and that one and that one. And now let's see if I isolate this, that is all considered one shape. So that's a nice way to work. Let's do a real world example here. I'm going to load the train that we've been looking at in the past. Save your, no, don't save it. Continue. Okay, let's grab that object. Let's come around here and we will select all of these and delete them. Select those and delete them, and we'll come back here. So we have that shape. I'll go to the front view, maximize it, put it into realistic mode, turn the G on the keyboard off for a second. I'm not sure if this is frozen or not. I'm going to select it and say freeze selection, and now we won't be able to select it or use it. So an example, now this particular photograph that I've used has some three-dimensionality to it, but I'm going to pretend it doesn't. So an example where I might want to make, I might want to use the technique we've just been demonstrating would be in this cab section here. Let's zoom in on it. Move it over a little bit here. And also show you a couple of tools I think that I probably haven't demonstrated. So this is actually the roof here is 3D, but probably right around there, that point will be where we want to start. So I'll click. Now, if I hold down the Shift key, that gives me a straight line. Click, hold down the Shift key again. I now have a straight line here. Click, Shift key again here. Now, I'm going to just set vertices, one there, one here. We'll do one there, and then Shift key across and close that spline. Now what we're going to do is we're going to, let's go into, we're already in isolation mode. So I'm going to turn off Start New Shape. Oh, that's already off, so that's okay. I'm not sure exactly how this is going to work. I'm winging it a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and make a rectangle here. I've got one there. And I'll make, let's leave it at that for now. I'll then go into, I wonder if these are two objects or whether they're one object. Let's find out for a second. We'll pick it up and we'll move it. So they're two objects. Remember I'd said sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't for me. So we'll go ahead and we'll add the E on the keyboard edit spline modifier, and that will allow me to then attach this one. And now they should be one object. And indeed they are. We can tell that because we can see the different vertices. Now to get the arc here, I can do this manually, or I could try to do it in another fashion, but I'm going to select, turn off attach. I'm going to select these vertices, oops, Control Z, right click, I'll change them to smooth. A little trick here, right click again, and now change them to Bezier. And now I can adjust the handles down like that till these are smooth, and then I could stretch out these handles a little bit like that to get my arc. Now let's go to the spline level, select that spline, hold down the Shift key, boom, I've got a second one, I've got a third one, and now for this one, I'll set that around there. I will then go to the spline level again. I'll scale it. I'll select, I'll go back to move, grab these vertices, have to go to the vertex level. And now I should be able to move those vertices straight down like that. I'm going to leave a little lip here so that I can get a nice extrusion. Continue with the process, right click here, I'll make that smooth. Right click here, I'll make that smooth. I like to make it smooth and then change it to Bezier because it automatically gives me some smoothness to what I'm looking for. Let's zoom in here and see how nicely we can get here. Okay, now what happens if I need to add a vertex? There's a great tool called Refine. So what do I have to do? I choose segment or spline. Let's see if I can find the Refine tool. Refine. Click on Refine. Notice that if I put a refinement in this, whoops, if I put a refinement in it, it attempts to keep the vertex, keeps the shape. Doesn't always work perfectly, but now I can pick that up. I'm going to make this a Bezier. Whoops, I need to go to the vertex level. So I'll take that one, I'll move that one over. I'll make it a Bezier corner. That Bezier corner allows me to manipulate one side without the other pretty quickly. I'll take this one, move this one down like this. I have to refine, put another corner in there, come in here, select it up like that. And that seems to probably will be good enough for what I'm trying to do now. Let's look at it. Okay, now we'll go up here, get up to the object level, and then we're going to choose extrusion on the keyboard, E, extrude. Extrude it a little bit. One of the things about Max is that you can orbit any viewport. I'm in a front viewport right now, but now as soon as I go like that, I am now in an orthographic viewport. So that allows me to then look and see the extrusion that I do like that. Now for this particular thing, I would then proceed to take that, hold down the Shift key, make a copy of it like this, make it an instance, and say, okay, give it a better name like, and let's see, cab wall, right, and this one would be cab wall left. And now we have the beginnings of what we're trying to make. So that's one example of 2D out of 3D. Okay, anybody have any questions about what I just showed you? Any questions? Nope. Okay. Let me go back to the shapes here, and I want to demonstrate one other thing that is a common thing that's going to come and bite you. I'll just come and go reset, which is that sometimes text in particular will have shapes that intersect. Now, I haven't planned this ahead of time, so I don't really know which text I should use to create that, but I'll make it happen. So let's try some Bookman old style. Let's see, italic and kerning. So these are some of the tools that are available for text. Max Text is pretty cool. Now let's zoom in on some of this here. What I'll do is let me go ahead and put an extrude modifier on it and extrude it up a little bit. So now we have some nice text here. It's often the case that Max will not mind, it doesn't mind at all if you screw up. So if I come back to the text and I add an edit spline modifier, I go to the vertex level, I grab that vertex, and I choose move. Let's have it so that we can zoom in on it in here in this viewport. There we go. So if I manage to make these crisscross like that, then this is the result you get. Everybody see that? So it's very common when you're working in Max to inadvertently make a very, very slight crisscross like that. And then that's why your text is not working. There it is, like that. So right click, turn it back into smooth, and then you're sure that the tangency is going to be better. Okay. What else? Hold yes. Okay, one other thing that is that you need to understand that's actually very important, and we're going to go reset one more time to show this off. I'll just go and make that. I'll set my my type to Bezier to. Let's go ahead and make. Here's an example where, like that, that's where you'll get that kind of intersecting shape, like that. And it's very often, even right there, it would be an intersecting shape. You might not notice it. So I'm going to go ahead and just make something here to demonstrate what I'm trying to show. So these might look like curved lines, but in fact, there are no curved lines here. These lines are made with straight line segments. If I go and I add an edit spline modifier to this, and I select the vertices so I can see the vertices, and I zoom in down here, you can see the straight line segments right down here where my mouse is moving. 1, 2, 3 straight line segments, and then looks like 4, 5, 6, 7. So I would imagine that there are 6 imaginary vertices in between here. How do we control that? The way we control that is in the interpolation rollout. And indeed, there it says 6 steps. If I reduce this, 2 steps, 1 step, no steps. So you can now see there are no intermediary steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8. And notice that now I have 77, and this now is a beautiful smooth curve, but this is going to create a hellishly overly detailed geometry. Let's go ahead and do that by now going up to the edit spline and adding E on the keyboard, extrude, and I will go into realistic mode. I will extrude this a certain distance, and I will come around here, turn off the grid. It's not obvious. Let's give it a better color until we turn on edged face mode. When you are making things in Max, if you see geometry that's dense like this, then you know that you've done something that you're not going to be happy with later. Now, this isn't that horrible. Let's go back down to the line, turn on show end result, and notice now that if I change those steps, this is probably the way you want your game's geometry to look. This is probably the way you want your film geometry to look. It depends. But you don't want your geometry, oh, and that's as much as it goes. It's 100. Well, good for them that they put a limit on that. It's easy to blow up Max by pushing these sliders and saying, let's just see what happens. Say, okay, you want 1 billion line segments. Sure, no problem. Just let me go and crash on you. Now, there is an optimize and an adaptive function here. So I have a straight line segment here. And if I turn off optimize, you'll see that this is, when optimize is on, Max is smart enough to know, ooh, that's a straight line segment. Okay. And adaptive, look at what adaptive does. Adaptive says, well, we don't really need it over here, but oh, we got a little curve here. So that's really where Max is being smart. Yeah, like 6 iterations on Turbo Smooth. Yes, that's how to crash Max. Now, here's the thing that I've learned working at Turbo Squid is that, I mean, I grew up with Max, and so I just assumed that everything that Max would let you do was kosher. But the truth of the matter is that not everyone in the world uses Max. A whole lot of people use Maya, Softimage, Lightwave, Cinema 4D, Modo, everything else that is a normal product that that basically doesn't want things to be like that. So what I'm discovering is that most companies, when they're looking for geometry, they want the polygon distribution on the mesh to be even, to be nice and even. And so what we just created here with adaptive is not preferable. That most companies would prefer to have an even distribution like this because it's going to be easier to texture. Because if they're going to apply smoothing, turbo smoother, mesh smooth, or some other kind of subdivision surfaces, that it's going to act in a better way. One other thing that Max is doing here, which has driven me crazy over the years, I still am not really out of the habit of doing this, is that if I right click on this and I go to Object Properties, let's see if I can find out where is this, and I turn off, I change so that I'm seeing it by object, and then I turn off edges only and say, okay, there we go. Now the front of this, what looked like a beautiful model, now becomes an evil, ugly model. Because now you can see all these tiny little triangles that are being created. And those are not something that is really something that you're going to like. So, I mean, there's a good reason those are hidden by nature, because, you know, if you, depending on what you're doing with the product, if you're just staying in Max and you're rendering in Max, you may never know that there's anything wrong there. Okay, but so in fact, the better way to create something like this would be to figure out a way to create it completely out of quads, completely out of four-sided geometry rather than triangular geometry. And in order to do that, we will be using the box modeling kind of techniques that I'll be showing you in a minute or a few minutes. But before I get into that, there's a couple other tools that I want to demonstrate inside of 2D out of 3D. Okay, so first off, one of the original methods to make objects, to make 3D objects from 2D out of 3D inside of Max was a technique called lofting. And I can't really, in all conscience, not let you get away with, you have to see what lofting is just so you can understand. This is a 20, 30-year-old technique, but there are still many times when you might find that this is a method that you might want to use to make something. So in order to loft something, you need a series of shapes and you need a path. So I'm going to make a, I'm going to turn snap on, and I'm going to make a, snap is on, oh, snap is set, not set to grid, hold on, grid points. There we go. Incidentally, this right here is an intelligence test. You get these all set, and if you don't read and you click this to exit, it clears them all. Okay, so now I'm just going to make a straight line. That's going to be my my path right there. And now I'll turn that off, turn off the snap. And now let's make some random shapes. Now, again, because I'm winging this a little bit, I'm going to do it in the, let's do it in the left viewport. And I'll make a, some random shapes. Let's make a rectangle. Let's make a circle. Let's make a star. Actually, let's make an n-gon. And make a star. And the star is only going to have 4 points. And it's going to look like that. Okay. So let's go back, zoom in here, get rid of the grid for a second, zoom back here. Just for the sake of recording, make things easier, I'm going to select all the objects and make them black. There we go. So you can see these objects. I'm going to hold this in case I mess it up. So this is going to be a compound object. In the last class, we talked about compound objects briefly. So to make a compound object, you select one object, and I would like to name this. I'll call it the path. And then I'll go to the Create panel and go back to create geometry and choose compound object. And I'm going to choose a loft object. Now with the loft object in place, then I can choose get path or get shape. So if I start with get shape and I will choose that shape, then I will move up the path somewhat. Let's get into a wireframe mode for a moment so that I can see which end I'm working with. So up around there, let's see, maybe around there, I will get shape and I'll get this shape. I'll go a little bit further and I'll get shape, I'll get that shape. I'll go a little bit further. I'll choose that shape again. And now I'll go all the way to the end. 100% get shape, and I'll get the star shape like that. If we go into realistic mode, you'll see what I've done here like that. Let's put it into edged face mode. And you can see it's a fairly messy kind of geometry that I've created. But what I like about this is that I now can go to the Modify panel, Deformations, and then I have a scale graph. Let's move this over here so that I can actually kind of start to sculpt this. I'll put some points in place. Let's see, I'll put a point here and here and here. These dotted lines should be where the new shapes are. I'll say I want to move. I'll choose those. Let's move these down. And now I'm starting to get that. Let's take this one, right click and make it Bezier. And then let's see what happens if I drag the handles out. So I'm starting to sculpt in real time. Maybe this needs to come down to be short like that. Maybe this needs to move back like that. And now I'm starting to act like an artist here, where I don't really know what I'm doing, but I am still able to make something kind of interesting. There you go. I've created some sort of an awl screwdriver. So that's lofting. And it's quite frequent that you'll use lofting tools. Anytime you find a tool like this in Max that gives you the sense that you're working with clay, that you're working in a flexible mode that allows you interactively to play and get instantaneous results, this is generally something that will give you pleasure and make you want to sit and work with it all day long. Now, and of course, the other thing that's so cool about Max is that all kinds of things are animatable. I turn Auto Key on, I'll go to frame 50, and let's see, I don't know if the handles are automatable. Are they? Let's see. No, okay. Handles are not, but the position of this stuff will be. So we'll go to frame 30, and we will, let's drag this and that over here. Play the animation that I created here. We'll go back to frame 100. We'll move this back kind of where it was, something like that. Let's play the animation that I just created. This is the joy of Max, and at the same time, it's the the part of Max that will drive you crazy. As long as you're just doing stuff that's just going to stay inside of Max, you can think this way, you can play this way and have tons of fun. If you're doing this and you're rendering, you can just, enjoy and enjoy. As soon as you are doing this and it's got to go out to your game engine, or it's got to go into Maya for, skinning, or for it's got to go someplace else, then you really have to scratch your head and start playing by the rules. Okay, that's the loft object. One last object that I want to show you, and then we'll go to poly modeling. And this is something that has sort of replaced a lot of the use of loft, and that is a sweep modifier. Sweep modifier is was something that came along that was sort of, I think it actually came out of the design viz world, but it's similar to lofting, but even simpler. So if I start by making, let's make this Bezier and smooth, just so it'll be kind of snake-like. There's a line that I've just created, G on the keyboard, get rid of the line and make it black. Okay, there it is. So I can put a modifier on this called a sweep modifier, S on the keyboard, S, and where'd it go? Sweep modifier. Now, it's this new nitro thing that makes this look like this. Okay, let's not make it black anymore. Let's make it another color like that. So the sweep modifier automatically sweeps a shape along the line. And there are built-in shapes that you can use. I can choose, there I have a tube. How about a cylinder? If I want to have a T, so I can do that. I can go back down to the line, and I can choose interpolation. Let's make it so we can see what we're going to see. Let's crank up the interpolation. Turn off optimize. Turn on edge face mode. I really like to see what I'm making. I think edge face mode should probably be a default. Maybe I'd leave it on. Okay, there's 0. That's how that works. I can also make my own shape. So I can come over here and say, I want to have a shape that looks like this. Shift key. Say yes, and then go back to that, choose this line, hold on, select, click, and now use custom section. And I'll choose that for the custom section. And then what happened? Oh, I see. I don't see. There we have it. That's got the sweep. Use custom section, pick that one. There we go. And let's get out of the edge face mode long enough to see that it's actually selected what I wanted. Now, if I remember, I should have put this back down to something normal. Interpolation, make this, let's say 5. Okay. Now let's go back up to the sweep and just show you there's a couple of neat kind of things here, is that you have this angle here. So I can adjust the angle that the sweep is playing at, like that. I can also mirror it, or mirror it on the other plane. And I think these are scaling. I can align to different pivot points. And there's other basic tools like that. Okay, but that's the sweep modifier, and that's also another really nice modifier for once you learn how to do that, for making all sorts of stuff. If I remember the last time I used that, I was making an engine for Autodesk, and the engine had wiring. It had tons and tons and tons of wiring. And by putting a sweep modifier on all these lines that I drew, boom, I was able to adjust the diameter of the wire all with just one click. I changed the diameter of the wire on thousands of wires at once. So that's a pretty cool thing. Okay, you know what? Let's take a 10-minute break, and then when we come back, we're going to dive into the world of poly modeling.
All right. All right, so a question did come in during the break, and the question is, what are some of the common techniques modelers use to create caves, dungeons, and other indoor environments for games?
Well, that's a pretty huge question. A lot of the techniques I'm about to show you in box modeling would be one of the ways that these kind of things are created. But that combined with using modifiers. Real quick, let me give you since you asked for that, I'm going to just give you a demonstration of one simple kind of a tool that could be used for creating, this could be like the same technique could be used to create a rock wall. So here I have a sphere, and then I just put a noise modifier on that sphere. So with a noise modifier, if I change the scale of it so it gets down, oh, hold on, I've got to have some strength in it. Let's say 22, 33, 44, like that. And then when we drop the scale down sufficiently, let's put a edge face mode in here. And now let's go down to the sphere and crank up the sphere's values there. So you can see how this could become a simple way that you could be creating, rock type surface. If you then proceed to add materials that also use noise. And also, let me just see if I get the noise. Let's try fractal noise. There we go. And if I have to find a happy balance between the scale of the noise and the number of segments in a sphere. So hope that answers a little bit of that. Okay, so let's go ahead and turn our attention right now. And then later on, I'll also show you some other sort of techniques for indoor environment type stuff. But really, there's very little difference between environments and architecture. And Max has lots of interesting tools for architecture, primitives, wall objects, and other kinds of objects for making that sort of thing. But in this in the period that we have remaining today, and I don't think I mentioned that I'm going to end the class a little bit early today, but so in the half hour or 35 minutes so left, I want to show you one of the most important tools that you can use in Max, and that's a technique called box modeling. Or often called polygonal modeling. One of the ways you do it is by simply starting with a box. I'm going to just drag out a little box here. Let's go into a single view. Let me make some adjustments to the box. Something like that. We'll get rid of we can leave the grid for now. So once I have and let's also make sure we have edged face on like that. The idea in box modeling or poly modeling is that basically you start with a raw shape. A lot of people simply start with a plane or a a single face, and then you start to brute force, add more faces, add more geometry. Everything is done by hand. How is that accomplished? Well, there's two basic techniques you can use. Either you can convert this to an editable poly object, or you can add an edit poly modifier. I prefer to keep the edit poly modifier on there. There's a few more tools hiding in edit poly than in editable poly, and it's the way I've sort of learned to do it. Now, 5 years ago, or however long it was, maybe 10 years ago, before edit poly came along, you would have used an edit mesh modifier. But I want to concentrate on the edit poly modifier right now. I'm going to try to, I'm going to make some sort of a airplane, spaceship sort of thing, just to demonstrate some of the tools and some of the techniques that you would use to do this. So as soon as you have an edit poly modifier on it, I'm going to go and select polygon, and there is a polygon that's selected. Once that polygon is selected, then I can come down to the polygon tools, edit polygons, and I can choose some of the basic tools that are used. Now, in each of these tools, you have the choice between using the settings or using the simple tool. So if I say I would like to extrude this, I can just press and drag and extrude out a section like that. But I can also click on the settings button, and with the settings button, now let me move this over here, I then have the ability to decide how much I want this to extrude. And then also, if I click on this, I have the choice of whether I extrude on group normals, local normals, or by polygon. Now, in this case, because there's only one polygon selected, that doesn't really matter. If I then choose the plus button, then it will proceed to repeat the process. Better than the extrude tool, and then when I got what I like, I can click on the check button, and there it is. So once I've got what I like, I'm going to choose the bevel tool. So bevel lets you extrude out, and then also change the size of it. I'll do it again, extrude out, change the size of it. Now, if I want, I can go to the scale tool, and let me hit the plus button here so I can see the scale a little better. I'm going to scale that in so it's more of a square like that. I'll repeat the process with the bevel. Now, this is an example where Max will it has no problem with, let's cancel this, and let's get rid of the that and go to bevel. And I'm just going to bevel like this and like that. Max will have no problem in letting you bevel something that is wrong like that. So you have to be aware as you're working that Max will do that. Okay, so those two simple tools of the extrude and bevel are a very common way for us to work. Now, let's suppose I want to make some wings on this. There's a number of ways I could do this. One of the simplest tools to use is the slice plane. I choose slice plane, and now there's a plane here. You can kind of see it, and as I move it down, if I then choose slice and then move, it's not showing very clearly that I'm slicing. Let's say slice, and we'll come, let's get out of edit poly and go back to polygon level. What has gone on here? Let's try the other side here. Let's go to edges. Oh, I didn't select any polygons. That's what was going on. Okay, so let's select these 4 polygons and rotate around the other side, and also select, oops, Control Z. I want the control button. I should have those polygons. So now I've got those polygons selected. Okay, now we're going to slice. I need to find the slice tool again. slice plane. And now I can see where I'm going to slice. So I will say slice, move up the slice plane, and now you can see the slice has been sliced. And I will say, let's make this a little bit fatter like that. And then we'll go slice again. And now if I get out of edit poly mode, you can now see the slices that I've created. Now, right here, you can see that the slice comes to there and then it ends. So there's a terminal vertex right there that will cause problems for some game engines. So generally speaking, you don't really want to work that way, but this is just really to show you the tools. Now let's repeat the process that I was showing you before. I'll select, let's say this, and that. Now notice that while I'm selecting, I'm in select and move mode, which I don't really want to be, because I don't really want to be moving these. Turn that off. I want to be just selecting. Select those four, and then let's go over here on the other side and also get those four selected. So now that I got those, I can then come and repeat that process that I was talking about before with an extrude with the settings button. So let's suppose I want to go like that and then repeat it once, twice. There we go. There's our multiple extrusions. Okay, now we'll say that's fine. We like that. Come around here. I'll go back to vertex mode to show you one of my absolute favorite tools in this program. I'm going to select these vertices right there, and notice that if I click, I'll just get one vertex selected, but by dragging, I'm going to get the two vertices that are there. And I'll add, and I get those two vertices selected. Just want to orbit so that you can see I have those four vertices selected. Now, the part that's really interesting is that I can use something called soft selection. So I say use soft selection, and then I can adjust the selection like this. And I hope you can see a kind of a rainbow effect. So these vertices that are in red will be moved completely 100%. The vertices in orange will be moved 50%. The ones in green, 25%. The ones in blue will be unaffected. If I then proceed to pick these up and move these back into space like that, maybe I will increase the fall off so I get a few more vertices selected. Now, if I get too many that I don't want, I can turn on edge distance. And then the edge distance was another way for me to control this. Let's go ahead in the 3D view. Let's lift this up in the air like that so you can see the advantage of what I'm trying to do. So soft selection is a very, very, very powerful way to work in Max when you're doing polygon modeling. Okay, other tools that I use all the time, I turn off the soft selection or it'll come bite me next time, is simply like the slice tool, I'll use the cut tool. Actually, first let's show you another tool I use a lot for bevel, and that's to remove edges. G on the keyboard, they'll hide this. So I'm going to make some sort of a thruster engine that's coming out of the back here. So I'll take this edge, and this edge, and if I click remove, that will get rid of them, but it will leave the vertices behind. And I believe what I have to do instead is come up here. I think it's control remove. Control remove does it, I believe. Okay. So, okay. Now I choose this polygon here, And let's go ahead and do the bevel again. One thing I don't think I've ever showed you is that I can drag this out like this, or even drag this over like this, so that I can, I don't have to do so much scrolling. I could make this shorter like that. I was trained away from actually picking these up and reordering them. That used to be kind of unstable, so I'm going to avoid that right now. Maybe it's not unstable anymore. Who knows? In any case, I'm going to come over here. Let's zoom in on this. Hold on one second, Control Z. Now, this is what happened to me the other day, yesterday, and I don't know why we suddenly have this issue, and I don't know how to fix it. So we're going to say select, 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 and everything is now flipped. So what am I going to do? I'm going to add a normals modifier to try to fix this. Let's see. I believe I need a normal modifier. And then flip normals. Nope, that's not it. I did something to make this happen. So I'm sorry to say I am going to have to redo this real fast. So I won't make the, let's go reset. I won't do the whole thing again. I'll just do a short piece of it so you can see the tools that I wanted to show you. See, it's doing it. I'm going to actually have to reset max, exit max, save changes, no, and come back in. I believe that this is simply a bug in the particular drivers on my particular machine. Bear with me for a second. Max 2013 actually loads up a lot faster than 2012. And 2012 is not too bad. So I'll give this a moment. So the kind of tool that I was starting to show you, these very basic polygon modeling, there is a tool set called the graphite tools. There's a ribbon, graphite tool ribbon. I'm going to demonstrate that in just a minute. And that takes all of those tools that we just showed you and gives you them sort of on steroids in an interface that's the whole thing used to be a plugin called PolyBoost, and Autodesk bought PolyBoost and also purchased time for the developer to come and integrate it into Max and add it so that it added all these features. And you're going to see that in just a moment here. And I will also shut down Skype. Let Max start up. Graphite was added about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 releases ago or more. Let's see. When I was working at Imagine It was in 2008. So I think that was probably the 2009 release was when that does it. Graphite is very, very cool. If you are used to Mudbox or ZBrush, it's got a lot of the same kind of things. It's not, I don't think it's as cool as Mudbox or ZBrush, but it gives you a lot of the same kind of flexibility. So Max is starting up.
So that could slightly answer a question that just did come in. I've noticed
Yep.
graphite editing tools as well. Are those essentially the same as the Edit Poly modifier with a different interface, or is it a more advanced version of Edit Poly?
Well, it is a more advanced version of it, and what it's got is it's got a whole lot of extra tools that that You see, the thing about Max that's so magical is that anybody that buys Max gets the software developers kit, so everybody can build plugins for Max. There's nothing, that's why Max has been so successful all along, is that it's just been customized by so many different people, so many different products. So Polyboost was somebody's attempt to take the Edit Poly set and then do stuff to it that was just, awesome. And I'm just wondering if Max is actually frozen here for me. It says it's starting it. So it's still coming up. Okay, give it another moment.
You want me to go ahead and pause while we're waiting, or is there...
Yeah, let's just pause the record.
And we're back.
Okay, so we're back. Okay, so we had a bit of a glitch there. What I want to do for a second is just point out very quickly some of the techniques that I hadn't quite showed you yet. And over here in Edit Poly mode, I've got the box. I'll come back over here and I'm going to take that box, go here, choose polygon mode, come over here real fast. I'm going to make some bevels and down. Let's get edged face mode on. I used to know the keystroke shortcut for that. And we'll go and we'll shape this down a little bit. I'm going to do a sort of a cutthroat version, cut rate version of what I was doing before. Okay, that'll be that. And then over here, we're going to, let's come to the back side of this. And what I was going to show you just a minute ago was that you can also make a neat thing by beveling inward. That makes a nice, cool adventure like that. The other tool that I was going to show you was okay, well, let's first do the slice plane like we'd said before. It won't slice unless I learned something today, which is to remember to get both of those polygons, and then we can slice them. And we will slice there and slice there. And then I will extrude, turn off the slice plane, grab that one, and Control key, grab that one. Okay, and now extrude again. Where's the extrude? Here it is. And we'll use the settings, and we will say extrude out like that. Once, 1, 2, 3, 4, all right, 5. And let's zoom back a little bit here. Okay, just to make it more interesting, let's go ahead and we'll select all of this. And let's get that slice plane back. I think there's something called quick slice that lets me go like this and say that's where I want to slice. And I set that, and that sets the slice plane. I slice it, and then I can move it, and I'll slice, and I'll slice again over here. Bad technique here because I'm doing this in the perspective view, so probably things are a little bit wacky. See, what did I say? There it is, it's wacky. Anyway, come over here to vertex mode, select that set of vertices, and this set of vertices, use soft selection. Turn off soft selection, there it is, and increase the fall off. Add an edge distance to it, and move those back in space. Increase the fall off a little bit more, move them back a little bit more. Let's see if we get a little more of that, like that. Move it back like that, move it up in the air like that. Okay, so the last tool that I wanted to show, edit, and we want to do a hold, so I can get back to this, hopefully, was the cut tool. I'm going to do the edge mode, and I'm going to, there's just so many techniques in here that I use all the time. It's hard to really go into that, but I'm going to say cut from here to here, cut from here to here. Okay, now I'll create a little, oops. One of the things that you have to remember to do after you use a tool is to turn it off. There we have that. And then I can repeat the process. Right click also gives me access to tools I've been using. So there's that bevel tool again. Right click, bevel settings. And we want to go in the other direction. There we go. There's a bevel, and bevel it in like that. And we'll move that polygon back. Oops, turn off soft selection. There's probably a keyboard shortcut for that. I'm not a poly modeler who works all day long, or I would be fluid and all that. Okay, so there's some of the tools that are available here. And then generally when all this is done, you add a turbo smooth or a mesh smooth on top of it, and that gives you your organic shape. And this is really the way that most character modeling takes place. So let's do an edit hold on that. And then I want to show you some of the graphite tools here. Before I get completely carried away here, let me just say that a lot of people actually model by starting with just a simple set of polygons. So a rectangle like that, if I convert it to editable poly, it then is a mesh like that. I might take an edge, and then that edge, I would then proceed to extrude the edge. And that would be how I would start working. So but let's go into the graphite tools, because I'm going to cancel that for a second, because the graphite tools really are designed for that sort of work. So some of the graphite tools, let's see, where's the graphite toolbar? There it is. Graphite toolbar doesn't actually do anything until you have an object that has a edit poly modifier on it. Once you have an edit poly modifier, then all these show up. Now, just as I've been working at the vertex level, at the edge level, border level, polygon level, and object level, that's where I find these here. The basic interface here is that there is a drop down here. So if I don't have an edit poly modifier, I can apply one there. And the thing about these tools is that you got to take time to memorize where everything is. That's the real headache. So, you know, once you spend a day with this and use it, and you'll see all of the possibilities here. So some of the cool tools that are in here, the freeform tools, are pretty neat. So for instance, I can do this sort of thing. I can just come down here and draw a shape like that. And now I have a polygonal shape. From there, I can extend strips. Just draw out strips here. Branches are 3D. Let me get into a slightly different view here. I think this is pretty cool. For tentacles, you're doing an octopus. Whoops, let's undo that. Let's just go up here. Like, there we go. From there, we go. So we have branches. Let's see, which one did I miss here? Topology. Topology is very interesting, actually. But let's hold that off for a second. So I don't use these all the time, so I basically just tell you to explore them. What topology does is topology actually lets you draw lines like this, and then as soon as you get lines that cross, you start to build surfaces in that way. So you'll notice that if I miss one, it doesn't do it. It's got to be quads. And this is an easy way to make all kinds of quads. Another thing that is very cool here, I'll probably do some of this on this airplane, is paint deformations. So I have push, pull, relax and flatten and exaggerate. So let's see, let's try push, pull and see what we get here. Okay, there's a strength and offset paint options. Let's see what happens. Oh, I have to have it on this object here. Hold on a second. So I'll go to there and let's actually collapse this. Collapse to, say yes, it's now an editable mesh, and then convert it to an editable poly. And now let's try the push pull and see what we get here. Okay, now one of my favorite things about this program is if the help system that's part of the graphite tools is advanced. So if I hold my mouse over this for a second, it says F1 for more help. I get the whole help system right here. And if I choose Y for video, now I don't know if it'll actually play in your, I don't know if you can see that playing. And unfortunately, I killed the chat on this side. Did I not? Oh, okay. Yes, you're in love. Yes. You know, I mean, I love this tool because if I don't know something, look, it helps right there, as it should be. Okay, so so there's push pull, there's relax. So I can say, oh, you know, that needs to. Well, let's do an exaggerate over here. Yeah, maybe not. Let's try to stick with push pull for a little while here till we can get this to do some more stuff. How about noise? This geometry is not complex enough for me to edit like this, so I'm going to do something to it. I'm going to tessellate it. There we go. Now I'm going to collapse it again. Unfortunately, the collapse goes to mesh, and then I make it an edit poly, and now I should have the ability to use exaggerate, and it should work better. Okay, why doesn't exaggerate? Okay, let's see. Change the brush strength. Shift Alt. Okay, there's a strong brush strength. There we go. It should be doing something to it. There we go. There we go. Now we're getting some exaggerate there. Okay, now I'm happy. Let's go and add some noise. Okay, is that starting to look evil now? Yeah, I think so. Starting to get kind of a Mudbox ZBrush feel. And then we can use a relax. Clean this up. Smudge. I don't even know what smudge does. Smudge, let's see, hang on this for a second. It'll tell me what it does. It's just dragging these vertices around like this. But anyway, it gives you some idea of what's going on here. And I'm going to run out of time shortly. So I want to show you one other one, which is that it also has a neat object paint. I'll come over here and I'll make a little cone down here. Let's just take that cone and give it just a few number of sides. So it's like that, and let's give it a very narrow, small radius, little height there, and just one height segment. That'll do. So now let's go to Object Paint, and let's see. I have to remember how to use this again. So there's a no object. The object to be painted. If no object appears, first use Edit Object List or Pick Object. So there's the list. Pick object. So I'm going to say, there's the object I'm painting. Now, paint on selected object. Now let's see what happens. Nope. Now I have to click on that paint button. There we go. There we go. Are we having fun yet? Graphite tools are the thing. They're the bomb. They're it. Very, very useful tool. Master this, and you will be the most powerful person in your game development team. Another tool that's really cool in here is the selection tools. So let's see, I better make sure, is there a way to turn this off? Yeah, thank you. So selection tools, hello. Do you have to have an edit poly modifier on it? It can't just be an edit poly. Okay, selection. Edit poly selection. There we go. You got to learn how to baby Mac sometimes. It's just like, okay, my graphics card, what does it have to do? Okay. So, I mean, this has this very cool selection tool, like it goes like non-quads. Those are all the n-gons that are, it's been selected. It's got selection tools. I can select by angle. I can pick one of these, select by, oh, I don't remember. Oh, there's angle. I got the wrong one. By normal. So it's got a ton of selection tools. You select one and then it'll grow from perspective view. More freeform tools that you can shake a stick at. And then there's also very good tools here for decimation. Let me actually kill this for a second, and we're going to go let's just delete this object. Get out of here. Delete this. In fact, I'll delete all this for a second. I'm just going to make a sphere and put an edit poly on it. Let's see if I can remember how to do that over here. Add edit poly modifier. There we go. Okay, so there are tools here for if I one of the cool things that you do is you want to do like an edge. You pick this edge, hold down the shift key, and you get a ring. Or pick this edge, hold down the shift key, and you can get the loop. Oops. Does it not see that as a loop? Let's see. Loops. Loop right here. Okay, so I'll use the tool that's there. That one, loop. So it gives me the loop. And then there's a thing called Swift Loop. And Swift Loop lets me add loops where I need them. I use this a lot.
A question.
I think that's about it.
Question did come in. If you push or pull really far, is there any way to add a bunch more polys to the area you created so that you can keep pushing and pulling?
I don't know the answer to that in terms of, I don't believe that there's an automatic subdivision that happens automatically. That's something I've wanted for a long time, but I'm not familiar with that specifically. What you'd have to do would be to add a tessellation. As far as I know, you'd have to add a tessellation at that spot so that you can tessellate at the object level. So I'll come over here and I'll say, okay, I want to select those faces, and then I go tessellate. And so you'd have to do it manually like that, I believe. Maybe there's something in there. I'll try to research that this week. And for next week, I'll get back to you on that if there is. I've certainly wanted that for a long time, but I haven't seen it actually happen automatically. Okay, this gives you an introduction to it. There is, unfortunately, I have a hard stop today, so I'm going to need to bail. But there's one more thing, if I can show it in a couple of seconds, which is that there's one other way to work, and that is by using something that is called a surface modifier. Let me go and make these smooth, and let me move over here a little bit. So if I have a spline, it's also called spline cage modifying, spline cage modeling. If I start with a single spline, I'll make a copy like that, and I'll copy it. I'll make 4 of them like that, and then I will go and I will select the 4 of these, and I will add a connect modifier. Is that correct? Cross-section modifier. Now, maybe they have to all be the same object. Let me see. And then if I add a surface modifier, flip normals, I think they have to be joined as the same object first. So hold on. We will go backward in time here. And we're going to get rid of those modifiers. And there we have. So let's take this one and let's add a edit spline modifier to it. And then we will do an attach at the spline level. Attach this one and this one and this one. And then now if we add a cross section, there we go. So now we have a cross section. And then if we add a surface modifier, this is old technology, but it's really good technology. And then I'm going to have to flip the normals. And there we have, this is a patch modeling. So if I go down the stack here and I turn on so I can see what I'm doing up the stack, I can select these vertices, I can adjust them, and then when it's all said and done, there's a patch topology. So if I crank this up, let's say make it 10, and then if I collapse all, make it an editable poly, and now you can see that I've made, because I cranked that up to 10, so that's a pretty dense technology. That's something else. And when I used to do character modeling, when I used to work for, low poly characters for game development, I would do this. And this was a good way to make high poly and low poly objects by keeping the original one and then changing the topology, cranking up the topology steps. Okay, I need to stop for today. So last week I had asked that you would try to find and set up a plane or a box with some reference objects. I want to take that a step further, which is that figure out something that you would like to model and find the reference objects for it and set it up, and then try to start doing some raw modeling with the box modeling tools that I've shown you against the polygon, against the reference plane. And if you can post something, that then I'll look at that and I'll be able to give you pointers toward it. Okay, that's it for today. Next week's class will run a little bit longer since I've shortchanged you for about 10 minutes. So next week we'll be diving into, we're going to cover a few more things about modeling, and then we're going to start dealing with materials and texturing in the next class. All right, everybody. Are there any more questions that I need to answer right now?
I do not see any, no.
Okay, great. All right. We'll talk to you soon then. Thanks for today.
Yep, see ya.